Welcome, guys, especially students of Accra Technical University, that is final year students. This is a new project work submission flow or guidelines that you are supposed to take note of. Yeah, so I'm going to take you through what as students you are expected to do all the way from your supervisor or sending your work to your supervisor, then your work passing through the system, going to the cash office to make payments, then going to the binding unit to bind your work, then finally getting an endorsement on your clearance sheet from DRIPTT, that's the Directorate of Research. Okay, so I'm going to take you through how things are going to be done in 2024. That is why we are saying that it is a new project work submission flow / guidelines brought to you by Accra Technical University Library. Okay, so let's start. Let me share this file with you. So this is the new flow as you are seeing on your screen. Yeah, so let me zoom it. Yes, so you can see, I think it's okay. Let me zoom. All right, I think it's okay. Let me do another zoom in. Okay, all right. So DRIPTT notice to all lecturers and final year students. The Directorate of Research, the Directorate for Research, Innovation, Publication, and Technology Transfer congratulate all final year students and their supervisors. So yeah, then it comes all the way to the final step in this process is the submission of project work to the ATU institutional repository. So the diagram that you see over here, I'm going to explain this diagram, this flow as you are seeing, so that you understand what you are supposed to do before, as students, your work gets into the institutional repository or ATU's institutional repository. Okay, all right. But before I explain this particular diagram or the flow that we have over here, let me take you down to some important notice. All right, so please note, we have information for students, we have that for supervisors, which I would go into that. Then we also have confirmation and next steps. That one is also students should take note of that. And we have clearance. So I'm going to explain the group submission. I'm going to explain the confirmation and the next steps. I'm going to explain the clearance aspect. It is there. Is you can just read it, but I'm going to touch on this. Now, let's start with the group submission. From what we see in this particular image, it's saying that for group project submissions, ensure that the first name on the list is registered in the institutional repository. So the first name on the list. All right, let me show you a sample of a project work and explain this information in relation to the names of the project work. Okay, so we have a sample of a project work, and so you see this, yeah. The index numbers over here are changed actually. So if as students, you are going to submit the soft copy of your work to your supervisor for your supervisor to do the penalty or the plagiarism check for you guys. Now, when you are submitting your work or your file to your supervisor, it could either be via email or you put it on your drive. That one depends on your supervisor or the conversation that goes on between the student and the respective supervisor. Now, if you are submitting the soft copy of your work to your supervisor and you are in a group like what we have over here, you are supposed to make sure that the first name, so in this case, this Ado Rebecca, that is the first name that we have when we are considering the group names. So the first name, Ado Rebecca, with the index number 06673306D, must be someone who has an account on the institutional repository. So it means that whoever you place as a group as a first person, must have an account on the institutional repository because the library is going to use this particular name, Ado Rebecca, and this index number for something. And you will see that when I start explaining the diagram or the flow. Now, should in case you are an individual, meaning just one person doing the project work, when you are submitting the soft copy of your work to your supervisor, make sure that you have already created an institutional repository account. So if you haven't created an institutional repository account, then you forward your file or your work to your supervisor. And your supervisor is done checking the plagiarism and anything or everything with respect to the work and forward it to the faculty rep. There's going to be a problem when we are doing the institutional repository. Okay, so let me explain this side. Let me go back to the diagram let me share the diagram again. All right. So look at this. Students, you are supposed to generate institutional repository accounts. This is the link. atu.atu.edu.gh. Okay. Then once you create an account, we assume that you are done with everything with regard to your project work. Now, looking at the flow, this side, everything that you see over here are the activities to be done by the student. This side, activities for the supervisor. This side, what ATU library is going to do, and this side, DRIPTT. Okay, so students, you have to create an IR account at atu.atu.edu.gh. You are just going to use your student mail to create the account on the repository. All right. Now, complete final year project work in accordance with approved ATU template. It means that you have done your formatting properly because when your work gets into the institutional repository, it will be checked by your supervisor and that of the DRIPTT. So if you don't do your formatting properly, your work will definitely be rejected. So complete final year project work in, take note, accordance with approved ATU template. If you are done with that, then you submit soft copy of your project report to supervisor. So before you submit the soft copy of your project report to your supervisor, make sure that you have done the appropriate formatting that you are supposed to do. Otherwise, in the repository, your work will definitely be rejected. Now, once you submit the soft copy of your project work to supervisor, it's up to the supervisor to now check the plagiarism, the similarity index for you, the students. So looking at this arrow, from this side, it moves all the way to this side. Now we have supervisor section, runs plagiarism tests in the Turnitin software. Okay, so is plagiarism score less than or equal to 40? That is the percentage currently we are using. So if the percentage is below this particular mark as you are seeing, or equal to that, then we are saying that move to the second stage, that is, or move to the other stage, yes, or the next process. So if you're able to get below or equal to 40, yes, what are you supposed to do? If you don't get less than or equal to 40, then no, back. It means that your supervisor will forward the work to you, the soft copy. Now you work on your percentage. Assuming you get 50%, you are supposed to work on your percentage. Then forward it back to your supervisor. Your supervisor runs the plagiarism for you. That is clear. Now, you've passed the 40%, or even you got less than 40%. Yes. If that is the case, you submit soft copy of plagiarism report to the faculty rep. That is not for you as students. It is for the supervisor to be doing those things. That is why you are seeing these diagrams under what? Supervisor. Okay? All right. So we have this flow over here. So if the supervisor checks your work and realize that it is less than or equal to 40%, the supervisor will then submit your report to the library faculty rep. Yeah. So supervisors know what they are supposed to do. So students, you are supposed to submit your work and check and get. Now, when the supervisor submit your work to the faculty rep, because you had a mark of less than or equal to 40%, automatically, the library rep for your faculty will map you. So map students IR account under supervisor. Now, the map student IR account under the supervisor, the library rep will not come to this section. You see? So if your supervisor submit a report that bears 4 names on the project work, the library rep is going to pick the first name among the 4 and map that person. Take a look. So if you have 6 names, then the library rep is going to pick the first name out of the 6 and map the first one, thinking that the first one has gotten an institutional repository account. So for group project submissions, ensure that the first name on the list is registered in the IR. This name will be used to map the project work. And that's what we have over here. That's what we have over here. So if you don't do that, it will be very difficult for the library rep to map you or to map the group. We are not going to map all the names as a group, but we are going to map only one person out of a group. And if you are just an individual, we are going to map you. All right, let's move on. Once the library faculty rep is done, then the next process is upload project work onto the ATU institutional repository. So how then will the student get information that, hey, wow, I have been mapped? How do you get that information? Now, please note, come to this side. Confirmation and next steps. Once the project is successfully mapped to the IR, that is mapping the students onto the IR. So we are assuming that they are the project. So once the student, that is the first name among the group or that individual, is successfully mapped to the IR, an email will be sent to both the students and supervisor. So the library faculty rep is going to send you an email that, hey, Mr., Mrs., Miss, you have been mapped. So go ahead and submit your work onto the platform. Yes, so the email will confirm the mapping. After this, student can submit to IR and proceed to the binding units. Good. So once you submit your work on the institutional repository, upload project work onto the ATU IR, the next one is the approval process goes on in the institutional repository. Now, approve project work in IR system. The first approval will come from what? Your supervisor. Because it's only your supervisor that can authenticate that you are submitting the correct file, not the wrong one. Okay? So when you submit your work onto the institutional repository, your supervisor will be the first person to check whether you have submitted the correct file. Or whatever he or she checked, you did that to the plagiarism, and here you are submitting the correct file. Once your supervisor approves your work, it goes to DRIPTT. So you realize that checks are approved, project work for conformity and approved for binding. Yeah, so let me stay at this side and explain something over here. So DRIPTT is also going to do a second check. And when DRIPTT does its checks and there are some problems, there's a possibility that DRIPTT will reject it. And once DRIPTT rejects your work, students, you are going to receive emails. The reason why your work has been rejected. If your work is approved, you are also going to see, or you are going to receive an email. You receive an email from DRIPTT. Okay? Now, once you receive an email that your work has been approved in the institutional repository, then you come to this side. That is, make payment for binding and proceed to submit printed copies to the binding unit. So at this point, if your supervisor realizes that you submitted the wrong file, he or she can reject. Once your work gets rejected by your supervisor, you also receive an email from him or her that your work has been rejected. Therefore, you are supposed to do a resubmission. When you do that, it goes back to your supervisor. Your supervisor checks everything, approves, it comes here, DRIPTT. That's the final approval in the institutional repository. Then it comes to this side. So what are you supposed to do as students? Let's come to your column. Once you receive the message from DRIPTT, you are supposed to make payment for binding. And you know where you are supposed to make the payment? Yeah, the cash office. With your receipts, you proceed to submit printed copies to the binding units. And all the way to this side, it ends everything. Binds hardcover project work for collection. Yes, so you submit copies to the binding unit, and binding unit will do the hardcover for you and inform you the day that you are supposed to come around for the work collection. Okay, so this is very simple. All right, very simple. Yeah, if you have any question, respect to the explanation given, hi guys, just feel free, go into the comment section and just type something in there. We are going to respond. All right, so clearance, definitely once you are done, you would love to clear yourself. So clearance, DRIPTT clearance will be based on proof of project work submission to the IR. So if your work is not there, that is the institutional repository, and you go to DRIPTT and they check the system, and we are not seeing the soft copy in the system, that is the institutional repository, then I'm sorry, DRIPTT cannot clear you, as well as payment for the binding of the hard copy. Okay, all right. All right, so that is all. This is the new update, project work submission flow guidelines for 2023 to 2024. All the best, guys. All right, and thanks for watching this episode of ATU Library tutorial series. Have a nice